I've played various RPGs and JRPGs over the years, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to call myself a JRPG fan. However, there's one subgenre of RPGs that immediately grab my attention whenever I see it, and that subgenre is strategy or tactical role-playing games. Now again, while I'm willing to give traditional JRPGs a try, the addition of that chessboard gameplay guarantees that my interest will be captured. I am just captivated by those little squares and the little incremental movements. In the recent Nintendo Direct, Square Enix announced their newest strategy role-playing game, Project Triangle Strategy. And today I'll be discussing my early thoughts on the demo released for the game.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another carrotscraps video, and by another I mean the 55th. So for background, I really haven't played much Final Fantasy, and I've never played Bravely Default. I've always admired the aesthetic of Octopath Traveler, but I've also never played that game. However, literally adding strategy to the title of their new game is what really caught me. The demo dropped on the same day that the debut trailer was released, and for a game that is at least a year away from release, I was surprised at how much the demo gives you to play with. Maybe that's because I'm slow at video games, but I think I went at a normal pace. The demo drops players in the middle of the full game's story, and really doesn't care if it spoils anything for you. Chapter 6, where the demo begins, plummets the protagonist into a world of chaos and war. Along with the core strategy role-playing game mechanics, another defining characteristic of Triangle Strategy is the voting mechanics. This detail really caught my eye. Like in one of the original Fallout games, you're presented with various choices throughout the campaign, which will drastically affect the events of your story. These story choices take the form of an option between morality, liberty, and utility. I love alternate paths.
Utility, morality,
Utility, liberty. Notable new additions to the strategy combat mechanics are the directional system and the predetermined initiative order. When I say the direction system, I'm referring to a mechanic where a player chooses which direction their character will face at the end of their turn, and then your opponent can do more damage to your character depending on what side of the character they're attacking. This is my first exposure to a mechanic like this, and I think it's really interesting. However, it is worth mentioning that while I like this mechanic, I did regularly forget to utilize it. But we'll put a pin in that for now. We'll talk about that more in the future. The second mechanic that I mentioned dictates a numerical order to all combatants on the field. Unlike other strategy RPGs where each player can move their forces during their turn, players are instead forced to carefully move each character individually. So with that loose description of what the demo is like, before I talk about my feelings on the gameplay, let's talk about how I feel about the story and characters. See, like this right here? Look, wait. This right here? See, so this right here, I have a perfect opportunity. I can go all the way over here and attack the back of this person, but instead, I attack the side of this person or the front? What do I do? Yeah, look at me. I attack him head on. Somebody's back was wide open. Use your brain. Look at this. There's a full back attack that I could have done, and I avoid it to attack head on. That doesn't give me a crit. So I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan, but something I've learned to accept about the franchise is that the writing for the characters is always going to be a little tongue-in-cheek. Most of the time, the characters will fall into over-exaggerated archetypes, and these story events will be somewhat predictable. However, a notable difference in Triangle Strategy for me was how excellent the writing was. Characters are taken very seriously, and the events and choices presented are very difficult for characters and for the player to choose. For example, the player is presented with a choice to surrender a prince to prevent battle with an enemy army. Doing so would prevent violent conflict in civilian territory, but giving up the prince means betraying the sacrifice of a deceased ally. This choice was really difficult for me to make, and while making it, I genuinely felt like I was taking all possibilities into account. And I'm hard pressed to find other comparisons in previous video games I've played where I felt just as conflicted as I did in this demo. The voting system is essential to this game's identity, and I'm glad it was showcased in this demo. As a player, you're not just presented with the option to vote, but once you've made your decision, you must also convince your allies to vote in your majority. Doing this occasionally requires you to go into civilian territory and find information to make more convincing arguments, which I loved as a gameplay mechanic, but as a person, it made me feel kind of sleazy. Again, I compared this kind of narrative choice to the original Fallout games, because that's my best point of reference for a game that offers such divergent pathways. In addition, in the original Fallout games, you could only access certain endings by gathering certain information in the world. which reminds me of this kind of convincing mechanic. I'm curious if this variety is a product of the game's simplistic art style, allowing for more story diversity, or if this is just a product of the developer's passion. But so far, I can say pretty confidently that this is one of the main attractions of the game, and that it does this better than other games trying to achieve the same effect. I will say that while I liked the characters and felt that they were very tangible, I also didn't necessarily gravitate to any particular character's charisma. For example, many of the characters in Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS are exaggerated archetypes, but because of their simplistic nature, many of them are immediately endearing. This is subjective, of course, everybody gravitates to different characters for different reasons, and it's possible that the more time I spend with these characters, the more endeared to them I will become. But I did think it was worth noting that while I was impressed by the writing in the demo, I didn't necessarily fall in love with any of the characters. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's finally talk about some gameplay. It's the same thing, look, right here. Look, oh my gosh, are you serious? Look at this. So I take Roland, and instead of attacking this character from the back, who I would do way more damage to, I attack this character from the side. What are you doing over here? Attack this guy. No. Look, 40 damage. You probably do so much damage. You just stab at him in the shoulder. Attack him from the back, you fool. Putting aside the gameplay related to story choices, players are also presented with various combat scenarios in the demo. Although now that I think about it, I think it's appropriate to say that the least amount of time in the demo was allocated to combat, which is fine, I'm totally okay with that. Combat, of course, takes the form of traditional strategy role-playing games, on the surface at least. A tile-based arena of battle where characters can be moved like pieces on a chessboard and attack within a certain radius. As I mentioned earlier, one of the bigger differences between this game and others is that instead of moving all your characters in one turn, each player moves a single character one at a time in a specific order determined by their stats. This was a really surprising detail to me, and honestly, I was a little scared when it was first introduced. What am I talking about? It wasn't a ghost, like I wasn't scared. I was intimidated by change. I was intimidated by something new. I wasn't scared. This isn't a horror movie. Let's be very clear on that. I'm not afraid of gameplay changes. I am intimidated by new mechanics, but excited. Anyway, let's continue. Let's stop getting so sidetracked. But after a while, I got used to this mechanic, and when combined with the other new mechanic that requires attention to which direction my character faces... Look, watch this. I left my back exposed. Like a fool. Like an amateur. Look at that. Look at how much damage they did to me. I started to really appreciate the new depth that these changes brought to this genre. The gameplay was familiar, but starkly unique when compared to others in the genre. In addition, I felt myself utilizing character abilities that affected status buffs more frequently than I normally would in a game like this. I mean, I use status attacks in Pokemon, but how often do you have conversations with people when they say they never even touch those attacks? I'm not sure if that's because the abilities themselves are better designed, or if the alternative turn-based system affected my opinion, but I was frequently using abilities that would increase another character's defense or offense when I normally wouldn't. Furthermore, I felt these buffs dramatically helped my odds during battle. The idea to add incentive for players to attack enemies from behind or from an elevated range is genius in my opinion. Because I wasn't thinking with back mechanics in mind, whatever they're called. It's such a simple twist, but honestly a realistic idea that changes the way you play a game in this genre. To be fair though, I repeatedly scolded myself for forgetting to protect my back or to attack an enemy's back. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But when I did remember to take advantage of these details, I felt like a genius strategist. I think I'm still so new to this idea that the longer I'm exposed to it, the more frequently I will use it. I just haven't gotten in the headspace of using it yet. Overall, the gameplay feels familiar, with one of the more unique additions to an established formula that I've seen in a while. Lastly, let's talk about the graphics. But instead of going behind this person and attacking their vulnerable, supple back, what do? Look, I consider it. I consider all my options. No, that doesn't look like a good idea to me. I'm going to attack from the side like a fool. Look at this. This is insane. How could you forget such a vital detail? Attack from the back, Roland. No. The graphics are one of my favorite things about this game, and it's because they're inventive and they're gorgeous. I mean, look at them. Look at them with your eyes. Accept that they look amazing. I need you to look at the graphics and just accept that they look amazing. Several years ago, when I first saw Octopath Traveler, I was equally impressed by the aesthetic of that game. Is this Octopath Traveler 3? Though I hadn't had the opportunity to play Octopath when I first started this demo, I felt like I could say with some certainty that Triangle Strategy significantly improved on the art style of Octopath Traveler, especially when it comes to character sprites and lighting effects. As gorgeous as Octopath was, I felt like the lighting in the game was a little too dark for my liking. Now, I don't think that this was a mistake in Octopath Traveler. It definitely felt like a stylistic choice, but that being said, I definitely prefer the lighting in Triangle Strategy more. I feel like the lighting changes really allow me to appreciate the environments that these 2D sprites inhabit. I also love the commitment to presenting the story using two-dimensional simplified sprites. While I love the use of anime artwork in games like Fire Emblem, I also think it's really endearing to commit to encounters without that crutch. In fact, I would argue that leaving out the visual elaboration allows players to engage with their imagination a little bit more, making these scenes somewhat more dramatic than they would have been. I do appreciate the option to see the artwork of what a named character looks like at any time during their dialogue. It's a nice reminder of who's talking exactly. However, when it comes to gameplay, I will say that I wish there was a little bit more visibility on the combat field. When moving a character, you always had a visual indicator of glowing tiles to communicate which character you were controlling and what you could do with them. Obviously, that is necessary. However, I felt these glowing tiles combined with the cursor over the character's head prevented me from seeing the field at times. I wish there was an option to make the HUD disappear for a moment so I could get a lay of the land a little bit better. But to be fair, it's possible that this existed in the game and I just didn't notice it. Overall, the game looks gorgeous, extremely impressive, and a huge reinvention on the similar graphics from a prior game. In the end, I was extremely impressed by Triangle Strategy. Its graphics seemed to improve on its predecessor in every way. Its gameplay was familiar and unique in risky ways. The writing is fantastic and difficult to consume at times because of the complicated nature of the drama. And lastly, I love how dedicated the game is to alternative pathways in the storytelling. We're not getting Triangle Strategy until 2022, and the year just started, so we have a long time. Wait, is it March? Oh my goodness, we're 3 months into 2021. What is happening? We're not getting this game until 2022, and the year just started, so we have a long way to go until the game's release. It's gonna take a while, and I'm glad we got this demo to hold us over, but seeing its tremendous quality only makes me that much more impatient for the final product. I highly recommend the Triangle Strategy demo to any fans of role-playing games or strategy role-playing games. In fact, I was so captivated by my time with the demo that I'm gonna go back and finally play Octopath Traveler. While Octopath appeared on my radar when it was first released, I intentionally never purchased it. I like RPGs and strategy RPGs, but I've never been a big fan of the team battle system from Final Fantasy games. However, it would appear that Triangle Strategy is somewhat a spiritual successor to Octopath Traveler, and with so many of the same qualities and production staff, I feel like I have to check this game out. At the very least, I need to play this game to hold me over until Triangle Strategy is finally released, because otherwise I'm gonna have a long wait ahead of me. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. If you want to watch me play video games live, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps. And all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram is at carrotscraps as well. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you soon. So what do you think Triangle Strategy should be called? They said it was just a working title, but then again, they said the same thing about Octopath Traveler, and they kept the name for that game, so who knows? We might be stuck with Triangle Strategy. I think there are worse names out there. I can live with Triangle Strategy. How about Watch Your Back? Cause you'll get stabbed in the back. I don't know. That's a bad title. Don't use that title.